Hello and welcome to another episode of Finding Peaks. I'm Jason Friesema, Chief Clinical Officer of Peaks Recovery, joined today by my co-host, Chris Burns, President and Founder of Peaks Recovery. We are really excited to have Steve, and I suddenly forgot your last name, Steve. I apologize.
Steve Taus.
Steve Taus of Coastwise Counseling in San Pedro, Los Angeles area of California. Welcome. Steve, you and I had a chance to talk, I don't know, a month or two ago, and I thought we had a great conversation. And what I think I'd like for you to do first is maybe kind of introduce Coastwise Counseling and kind of talk about some of the newer approaches that you're using to kind of help people out. I think starting with the emotional transformative therapy. I think, honestly, I've been in this field a long time, and you got to explain a therapy modality that I wasn't super familiar with. So I'd love to have kind of a similar conversation. So yeah, take it away.
Thank you. Jason, Chris, thanks for having me. It's a real treat and delight to team up with people of your caliber and with your business and company and the offerings that you guys are doing for folks in Colorado. And as both of you just said, I'm from San Pedro, California. I'm a licensed marriage family therapist by trade since 2008, and I have a business called Coastwise Therapy and Coastwise Recovery. So one half of the business provides general mental health, anxiety, depression, marriage issues, the usual kind of gamut of mental health. And then we also have an outpatient drug and alcohol program focusing on developing sobriety. So we have two things that we're doing. I'm passionate about both, and I'm passionate to be kind of sharing with both of you who do the same thing in Colorado. And that's a little bit about me. And then just to kind of return back to, if you'd like, I can start talking about emotional transformation therapy as one of the treatments that I offer clients.
But before we even get into that, what brought you into the counseling field? I usually like to ask mental health professionals that question, actually. So yeah, what brought you into this field?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
My first love was basketball, and I thought I was going to play for the Los Angeles Lakers. And then I learned that I was not good enough to play for the Lakers, and I'd have to choose something else. And so I was always good at talking to people. And there was a time in my life where I was the class clown. I wasn't doing very good in school, and I was getting most of my attention negatively through disrupting teachers' lessons plans and joking. And then somewhere along the way, there was an elective, which essentially was a group therapy elective, which I didn't know that's what it was, conducted by a therapist. And then that therapist thought that I was intuitive and insightful, and called my dad and told him that. And my dad thought he was getting a phone call for another detention or more disruptive behavior. And it was a compliment that I really needed. I was kind of down on myself, and this adult person saw something intelligent in me, and it seared into my body and my spirit as something that I could do. And then I went on to college eventually and didn't know what to major in, and chose psychology, thinking, well, there's a psychology to everything, so I'll just start here. And it wound up being a right fit. And then later on, doing my own therapy and having my therapist affirm to me that this is something that I would be good at. Nice. And then choosing to go to graduate school and pursue this career.
Awesome. Yeah. But I do like to say good counselors are usually born, not made. I mean, we do have to learn skills and that sort of thing, but it does seem to be the good ones. It's kind of an innate capacity.
I agree. Don't ask me to do your taxes or change your oil.
Me either.
It's something I know how to do. I can do this.
I actually wanted to be the point guard for the University of Arizona. I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, going with my older brother and my grandmother to basketball games. And all I wanted to be was Damon Stoudemire. I mean, everything. And it fit me perfect because I'm about 5'9" on a good day. And I too had to grapple with a little bit of that identity and purpose when that wasn't the case for me.
Cool. Well, I was going to be a shooting guard for the Nuggets. So I'm glad we've got this all worked out.
Yeah, we can weave our love of basketball and our childhood dreams into our podcast.
Exactly. I like it. All right. So anyway, Steve, tell us about emotional transformative therapy and how'd you come across it? And yeah, Give a description of it.
So how I came across this years ago, again, I mentioned I was in my own therapy. My therapist at the time had discovered this and said, Steve, this is the thing. You're really going to have to learn this. I want you to trust me. I want you to say yes. And I want you to, consider getting some continuing education in this. So I said, okay, I will learn. So I learned by dumb luck by just, having the therapist that I had at the time. So I went on, there's 5 levels of training for emotional transformation therapy. And essentially what it does is the following, right? So it's attachment-based therapy, right? So it attends to remembering that who's sitting across from you has an attachment style. Maybe it's secure, maybe it's avoidant, maybe it's resistant, ambivalent, or disorganized, or any of these, right? And learning how to kind of remember to connect with them and to attune to that, give them a good attachment experience with you as a therapist. And I found that to be just stylistically very much in my own styles. I really want to have a real relationship with the person sitting across from me. And this therapy reminds me and forces me to attune to that. And then coupling the attachment style of the person with these visual tools, right? So emotional transformation therapy is about using color and light, visual stimulus for precise brain stimulation. So the person is going to get the healing quality of both light and color to attach and create their own relationship to that with what they're working through. So what I would kind of liken this to is having a piano tuner tune the piano to just the right sound, right? Everybody has their own kind of frequency, and they vibrate in a different way depending on kind of what they're going through, whether they're grieving the loss of their grandmother, or they're, at the beach looking out at the ocean, that they're gonna feel a certain way, and the color and light can help induce or stimulate healing outcomes. So I'll speak a little about each, right? So light is very well documented. There's lots of people who have talked about having seen the light, or the white light of a near-death experience, or a light bulb popped off in their head and they had an aha moment, or people in Alaska who don't see the sun for several days throughout the year, sitting under lamps. So that there is a very real light healing property that happens. Okay. Then what we've sort of discovered, so the lead pioneer is a man named Steven Vasquez out of Dallas, Texas. It's a really brilliant mind, discovered that color has the same thing. So all the color in the visual spectrum, from red to violet, indigo, etc., has its own energetic vibration, right? It's not just kind of woo-woo kind of Venice Beach stuff, but real science. And that you're taking this kind of energetic vibration of this color, and all the color also is shown to be specifically good for certain cognitive, emotional, spiritual, and physical states of being. So I can listen to someone talk about a particular problem and select a color that will help augment or accelerate how fast somebody can begin to work through a particular problem. And why that is we're tapping into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is something that excites me in this next chapter of mental health, psychiatry, healing, is how do we as professionals, as healers, induce that? How do we get somebody into their parasympathetic nervous system? And if you're a listener or a layperson who doesn't know about that, this is where healing occurs. So it's the $1 million question that not every therapist and doctor has to answer. How do you get somebody into their parasympathetic nervous system? Well, it's very, very hard to do with regular talk therapy. It's very hard to do.
Yeah.
But the color and light, in conjunction with attuning to attachment, will help a person settle and drop into their parasympathetic nervous system, and they'll be able to cut through problems at an accelerated rate. They'll have emotional breakthroughs. They'll have cognitive clarity. They'll even have physical relief in their body. something that I didn't think I was going to be able to get as a mental health therapist, see somebody get physical benefit from the emotional work that we're doing. There's 4 primary tools. I don't know if I'm talking too much. I can stop here. Or would you like this?
Yeah, let's go through the tools, and then I actually want Chris to kind of react to what we're hearing here, because he's hearing it for the first time, I'm sure.
Okay, right on. And forgive me if it's a little bit out of order. I'm just excited to share about a therapy that didn't work. So there's 4 primary tools, and I'll share the about 2 of them most specifically. One tool is called the color spectral chart. And it's basically just a poster you can imagine looking at has every color on it. Sort of looks like a psychedelic poster in a college kid's dorm room, has every color in it. The second tool is a machine. It's called the ChromaPulse 2, and it emits color and light. So this is a very dynamic tool because you can use both, whereas the first tool I just mentioned is only color. And then the third tool, they're called the color dowels. So they're like these little small sticks, and each one has its own color: red, blue, green, etc. And those are used for specific kind of peripheral eye stimulation. I might liken that to what maybe an EMDR therapist does. And you're targeting the brain with the brain very specifically with these different eye movements. And so is the color chart, and so the light machine. And then the fourth is something called the blackout goggles. And these are literally blackout goggles that have just 2 little small peepholes in them. And you can turn them into specific positions so that you can very precisely aim where light enters the eye that corresponds to certain parts of the brain that stimulate certain responses in a person. Okay, so why that's interesting, the visual stimulation and aiming that directly into the brain is, they used to say, like a person might say, look, my identity is a depressed person. That's just how I am. And that's not necessarily true. What's true is that there's a part of the brain that's managing the depressed problem, and it's not very good at that. And this therapy will serve to locate and find that area of the brain and the other part of the brain that manages it better, and moving that information or that area that governs that to a part that knows how to do it better. And how that's done is with the color and light. I wouldn't be able to do that otherwise. So I'll speak about the color chart a bit, and then I'll talk a little bit about the light machine, because those are the 2 most exciting. So this color chart, or did you want to say something?
Yeah, why don't you describe those 2, and then we'll just have a quick conversation about it.
Sure. So the color chart is a great diagnostic tool. When I begin with a client in early treatment, I like to have them talk about their primary issue and look at each of these colors one by one, discovering which one of these colors is easy for them to look at and which color is difficult to look at. So what happens is there will be some colors that they can look at straight on, and there'll be no visual distortion. That's very important, is you want to find where they distort the color. So what I mean by that is they might be looking at green, and then on the chart, their eyes expanded. It looks like the whole chart's green, or it looks like the yellow is kind of darting into it, or it's shrinking, or they see something in that. What that visual distortion is letting me know is that they're not oriented, right? So where this is really a gift in my work is people dissociate. And I used to think that only really highly traumatized people like a combat veteran dissociate. It's not true. Regular old people, just like you and I, get emotionally overloaded and we dissociate. But in therapy, that dissociation can be very slight and very subtle and not detectable to the person and not detectable to the therapist. And what that color distortion is identifying is a form of dissociation with a specific color that corresponds to a certain type of cognitive or emotional or spiritual state. And so what it's doing is it's simplifying for me precisely where the area of treatment needs to become targeted. And I can save people time, and I can orient them quicker and move them through problems faster just by employing the use of color. So that particular tool is a favorite because it will precisely aim therapy. and orient and let me know precisely when they're dissociated and not fully present for the issue. The second tool is the color and light machine. So you can imagine sitting in the dark in an actual machine that emits color. And I can blend those colors. So I can take red and green and blue and blend them so that they match the emotional experience that the client is having in the moment, how they're attaching, how they're relating in the moment with the color, with the issue that they're working on. And what's cool about that is this becomes very physical. What I found is people's stuff is in their body, and it's hard to get at all that stuff that's in their body. And as they're looking at the color and the light, they'll tell you, like, my shoulders are really crunching up and it doesn't feel very good. And I'll start to adjust the color. And this would be a blue issue, by the way. I would start blending blue or removing the blue until they say it's better or it's worse. And then I'll ask them, let me know when it's better or it's worse. And when it's better, they'll go, it's better, but now it's in my ear. Now it's kind of like the feeling is in my ear. And I change the color again. And what that's, it sort of becomes like a cat and mouse where I'm chasing this little physical symptom out of their body while they're having these emotional experiences, while they're having different memory. And it makes the therapy very dynamic.
Yeah. Chris, I'd love to hear what you hear and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, this has just got my wheels turning. This is the first time I've heard of it, and a great explanation, so thank you very much. I've spent the last 3 years personally on a personal journey in SE therapy. And when you're talking, being able to move people much quicker, I found myself, even as someone in long-term recovery, really struggling to find the somatic areas in my body and to attune to those, because my brain, for so many years, had kept me so safe. And so with this light therapy, it appears to be such a dynamic way, to your point, to get people to settle and to get into that parasympathetic nervous system. It took me 11 years into recovery, and I had to go to the Meadows Behavioral Health and get into my parasympathetic nervous system for the first time, and I've been working at it ever since. But I think maybe to your point a little bit, there's a lot of things in our world and in life that pull away from the opportunity to get into that system. There's a lot of barriers to that. Mainly, I got to go back to work. And this seems like a really, really cool modality that can help people get grounded and settled and safe much quicker than even something like an SE therapy that's in the body. But most certainly, as you said, the talk therapy. What are you finding for people when they come in as far as getting into the body? Does that happen pretty quickly after that first session? Or does that take a little bit of time, a little bit more rapport building? Because my experience with other modalities, absent of talk therapy, it takes a bit of work to really get into that and a lot of time and effort.
Yeah, that's a great question, Chris. I think I meet people who are more open. I meet people who are more naturally sensitive, and the color and light will have immediate impact on them, and they'll be able to report things in their body. And then there's people like you're describing, or maybe it's part of your journey, that are less that way. They're less connected, or they're just, in my opinion, they're just kind of more bulkier type. That takes them a little longer to connect to what's actually happening in their body. And so as I meet them, I might have somebody who is describing something that's clearly pretty hard hitting, and they're pretty non-reactive. And so from that perspective, I know, like, they're really disconnected. They're pretty well disconnected from it, because they're talking about something that's so hard hitting without much change in their body. And so it's both, right? It can take a while. But a lot of times I find that results come more quickly. It's very safe, obviously, unless you have a seizure issue. And it'll help inspire connection to the body and the spirit.
Yeah, I love how you stay out of, it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but with the modality, you tend to stay out of the bulky parts of the story, if you will. Kind of a lot like SC is we get into the body and we explore the body, things come up. But as a practitioner, I'm sure on the client level, it's quite nice to be able to move through something where I'm not retelling all of my shame and pain. And every single session, we can really get into what matters in that body and that mind-body connection.
Well, what does happen, to your point, is because it so easily or quickly gets people into that healing part of their physiology. It's kind of like when we'll talk about this later with psychedelics, but like basically what's achieving is it's slowing down the amygdala. It's causing that kind of fear center that gets caught up in those, bulky details, and softens that so they can begin to use their other parts of their, emotional range or their spiritual range or their, intelligence to start kind of unhooking, solving, healing these kind of difficult things without it being like too much time in the bulk of all the content.
Yeah, I think I love that about ETT, and I think somatic experiencing has similar qualities. And I like that our field is learning that like we don't have to rehash every detail of a trauma for people to find healing. Because that almost creates an exposure type environment. And I think EMDR actually can be pretty intense and kind of expose people to a lot of things that where they struggle to stay in that parasympathetic nervous system. So I really appreciate your pretty thorough description of it. And so let's transition first to ketamine-assisted therapy, which is, again, kind of a newer approach. We're finding, I think we're finally starting to find our groove here at Peaks, where we're getting some efficacy with the ketamine-assisted therapy, particularly with treatment refractory depression, people who, in even high degree of suicidal ideation that doesn't seem to move much with other medications and psychotherapy. And the use of kind of a 6 series set of ketamine infusions is what we're using here, does seem to kind of help people be able to dissociate and maybe detach from some of those negative cognitions that they tend to be stuck in. I'm curious kind of how you, Steve, are using ketamine-assisted therapy and what drew you to this modality.
Yeah. Oh, man, you guys are so cool. I am impressed. I'm so stoked that you guys are thinking this way and implementing this into your services for people. Like I'll move into it just a moment, but like this next chapter of mental health and psychiatry and well-being, I think it really is, color and light. It's neurofeedback. It's I think a lot of like Gabor Mate and Bessel van der Kolk's work around getting people back into movement in their body, and it's psychedelics.
Yeah.
Right. These modalities and therapies are effective and they're intelligent, and ketamine assisted psychotherapy is one of them. So what I can say about it is probably my personal experience and partly my professional experience. My personal experience is maybe 10 years ago, I had my first intentional ceremonial psychedelic journey. I didn't fully understand what I was signing up for. People who took me there, I had a transformational experience. And it caused for me to become very interested in these plant medicines, synthetics, and the firepower they were rolling out and how fast they were rolling out that kind of firepower, how fast people could heal and really change. So when ketamine became known to me as a therapist, as like a, above board treatment, I went and got trained. I trained with Phil Wolfson in San Francisco at the Ketamine Training Center. And then I've since implemented it into my work, and I work mostly with intramuscular injection and sublingual lozenges. There's different routes of administration, as you know.
Yeah.
These are the two that I use. And what I really like about ketamine specifically, we can talk about many psychedelics, but we're talking about ketamine now, is ketamine is a safe medicine. It is long used. It's very well known in the hospital. Yeah. It doesn't disturb respiration. There are very few things that would disqualify a person medically from use. I mean, you would want to use this with people who have psychiatric problems like thought disorders. But it's a very, very, very safe medicine. And what I really like about it is it's a medicine that I believe is going to be a bridge and gateway to other healing psychedelics, right? So ketamine is classified it's an NMDA antagonist, and they think it moves in the glutamate receptor area, the neurotransmitter side of the brain. And that's significant because then that means it doesn't get into SSRI world, serotonin world.
Yeah.
Like this means like a person who's really depressed or really anxious or really traumatized, these people are probably on psychotropic medication that's going to immediately disqualify them from other psychedelics, like mushrooms, like MDMA, like many of them, ayahuasca. They're not going to be able to do them, but they can do ketamine.
Right.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, because it's a different neurotransmitter. Exactly.
Different system.
Yeah.
Right. And it only lasts an hour, and it gives people the break of normal mind. Like the thing that's so cool about it is, like I think how I think, I feel how I feel, I understand the world how I understand the world. My brain is programmed the way my brain is programmed. My default network is what it is, and it's very hard to have a break from that or adjust that. And ketamine will allow that to happen. It's also a dissociative anesthetic, right? So it causes that break of normal mind and introduces a psychedelic experience with new access to new thinking, new emotional experiences, new spiritual experiences, and people come back feeling better. It has, as you know, it has a very robust antidepressant quality. So if someone's really depressed or suicidal, it'll probably really relieve a lot of that most of the time. And then it's indicated for a lot of other things. I've seen people, work through a lot of substance use issues. I've seen people work through long-standing anxiety issues or traumas. It's good for spiritual growth. It's really a wonderful medicine, and I'm glad that it's becoming more readily available. I do think it needs to be done with professional hands, curated and intelligently. I think there's a lot of things that can go wrong, but these are some of my immediate thoughts about my admiration for the medicine.
Yeah, I think it's shown to be super powerful. And in kind of preparing to talk to you, I came across this concept, at least that I was reading about how we build a lot of our identity basically on giving ourselves feedback, where we are kind of looking in the past and kind of building out our identity. And some of the ketamine-assisted therapy documentation that I was looking at talked about ketamine allowing people to give themselves feed forward, where they're able to kind of project forward and build an identity looking forward rather than just only building it based upon things we have done in the past. And I found that to be fairly intriguing. I haven't had any opportunity to do anything with that feedback, and I don't know how that strikes you, Steve, but that concept was brand new to me as of yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, I think what I could say that's kind of relates to that is my own personal experiences with medicine. I think if you're going to be sharing it and offering it or teaching it or giving it to clients, that you have the experience of the medicine yourself. And my experience with the medicine, it's good for my existence. I find that like it helps remind me about all of existence and my place in it, and how to be in the world, right? Like I kind of remember things or are shown things about how to live, right? And so to me that feels like kind of feed forward, where I kind of come out of these and I'm in touch with some form of love or some form of like wisdom about how to conduct myself internally and externally in relationship to myself and my world, that just feels healthier and smarter than an hour before before I went into the journey. And that's what I've seen with clients. I find a lot of clients come out and they have those types of feed forward experiences. I mean, sometimes they come out and there's lots of turmoil, which is why you want a good therapist or a doctor who's helping them make sense of all that. But generally speaking, I think feed forward's a great way of talking about what it can do for people.
I really appreciate you checking in with that. And I had no idea that folks that were on SSRIs were a candidate for ketamine. I mean, that just warms my heart. I come from a very, in Prescott, Arizona, I'm sure you see a lot of it in Southern California. Lord knows they have quite a few treatment providers out there that are 12-step based. What are you doing for individuals who are coming to you that maybe have had trauma resilient, we'll call it, some people call it treatment resistant tendencies, and they just haven't, they've been to 5 to 10 treatments and they've been fed, the book from 1935, which has a lot of great tools in it, but it really butts up against some of these opportunities that we have to satiate the nervous system, to see forward, to be objective with our experience, potentially the emotions that are associated with it. How do you chop through the shame that's going to come up? Because I can remember signing up for, I'm going to Costa Rica for my first ayahuasca retreat in February of next year. And I remember going into my therapist, and this was months ago. I said, Paulie, I got a little bit of shame here. And I said, I'm doing this ayahuasca thing. And I'm not a 12-stepper anymore. I'm a mountaineer. I take people outside. But she goes, Chris, stop it. I'm doing my ketamine-assisted therapy next week. I said, all right. And that was what it took for me to walk through that. But talking about somebody new to recovery, how do you walk through that with them?
Yeah. Now I'm so glad that you brought that up. And for listeners, I hope that this becomes like one of the more interesting parts of our conversation is, not all the shoes fit, right? It's a case by case basis. You gotta decide if this is the right shoe, and this could be a right way of healing. But first and foremost, I love the 12 steps. I spent a long time in a 12-step program myself. I could probably still recite like many of the popular passages of that book, sponsored and sponsored people. Like I know this philosophy very well, and I have a great admiration for it. It's it's something that to really think about. I think, I have some colleagues who have treatment centers here in California, and their position is most people are going to relapse. Like relapse is a very common part of the healing process for addiction. Most people don't get it right the first try. And so his thought is, let's give him ketamine. Like maybe it will help induce the psychic change that Bill Wilson and Dr. Silkworth talk about in Alcoholics Anonymous. Maybe it won't, but it does have a very strong effect on reducing alcohol. We've seen that in the science, right? So it's something to like really think about. And there's there's different people in AA, or like, let's say like the Pacific group have very strong opinions about what medicines you can take and not take. And I don't care. What I care about is if it works. And I've seen reduction with substance use through ketamine. And I've heard these wonderful stories. I met a man who was one of those very deeply entrenched meth addicts who tried to do like a cop suicide, to provoke the cops to shoot him. He had one single ayahuasca ceremony, never used meth ever again. And I have a colleague of mine who spent many a year addicted to heroin, almost died of heroin, had Ibogaine treatments in Mexico, totally obliterated her opiate addiction and hasn't used ever since. And so for someone who's new in recovery, I'm not sure that I would immediately move to a psychedelic as a treatment option, but I would certainly consider it, and I would certainly use it if I thought it was appropriate. And then definitely with more established recovery, I just worked recently with 2 different men who are longtime AA old timers who had nagging depression and nagging anxiety and nagging issues that were obstructing more relational fulfillment, and safely underwent ketamine treatment, got a lot of good benefit, and did not pick up.
Yeah, I love that. It's really exciting to hear. I mean, old timers and the like. I think I remember we had a mature adult in our program that was 74 years old and was one of our first candidates for ketamine, and just the ability to move through issues and areas in which they're stuck. And I wanted to ask that question because I believe when we can get the depth and weight of the honest truth behind some of these medications into those rooms in a formidable way and a connected way, I think we begin to start to save a lot of lives that would have otherwise been lost. And one of my status experiences as being a part of the 12-step program is I would come in as a young adult and, Joe would be there with 15 years. And then I'd come back the next day and he'd be gone. And maybe if I'm lucky, I get to see him again in 3 weeks and he's lost everything. And so I'm hopeful that now that these new progressive modalities and these opportunities to really just meet people where they're at can speak to some of the old timers and maybe create an opportunity for them to work on their mental health. Because let's face it, when we started, in 1935, we just wasn't a lot of psychotherapy going on, and there wasn't a lot of talk of mental health. And if there was, you certainly weren't hanging out in that AA meeting. So I just appreciate the breath of fresh air on this modality and the way that you explain it and its intention. I think most people can probably see themselves in their recovery long-term benefiting from something like that.
Yeah, I think also is just like, my like deepest kind of, regard for 12-step philosophy, because people who really do it will save their life. But I think one of the things that it has not done, to your point, is it doesn't always relieve the other types of pains, sadnesses or depressions or traumas. And what I think is exciting is an cross intersection between therapy and, let's say, 12-step or psychedelics, to be able to introduce something like MDMA or mushrooms to help overcome those issues, so that people really have a good life, really have like a more fulfilled experience. And I think a lot of the other psychedelics remind and teach people over and over again that there's such a bigger experience to be had, where that far, supersedes and outweighs, getting drunk, for example, and their lives really get better. That's really what I'm interested in, and kind of why I'm healthfully jealous of you guys from Colorado, right? You guys can do more right now, because like that's what it's about, right? I think you're offering in mine. It's really about giving people a good life, man. Like what I really want to say is, I want to live a good life. I want everyone else to have a good life. You have a certain amount of time on the ride before you die, right? So while you're here, it ought to be good. And if it works, then it works, right? And so, like, I always tell people, if you're going to work with me, I'm going to give you what I got. I'm going to give you everything I got to help you win at this thing. I want you to have the life that you envision in your mind. And I will use as many of the tools as I can to help you get there, and implementing psychedelics is going to be so it's going to be so helpful with people, especially when you combine that with like the care of a good doctor or a good therapist, nice, all the rest, environment and peers, etc. So
Yeah, I think it is a beautiful thing about being here in Colorado with this Prop 122 that we passed, and that, hopefully within the next couple of years, we'll be able to really expand what we are doing and move beyond just the ketamine assisted therapy, and really move into more of the plant-based medicine as well. And it just kind of in the brief time we have remaining, I did kind of just want to talk about even the use of psilocybin. And the more kind of research and my own experience with psilocybin, I've been reminded, I was listening to a different podcast called Radio Lab, and it's actually a science podcast. And it was about how sorry, I'm about to go on a little tangent, but I'm going to bring it around. Hopefully you can track with me. But it was about how forests are connected. All the trees in the forest communicate with one another. And this is new stuff, right? Like, they started figuring out that trees were transferring nutrients to sick trees through the mycelium, right? Through fungi, through mushrooms. And if a tree would signal to other trees in the forest that like something unsafe is happening, or a disease is coming, or an infestation is coming, or we're running out of water over here, and they can transfer nutrients. Or if a tree is beginning to actually perish, it will dump its nutrients into the mycelium, and mycelium will spread the nutrients out to the other trees. And then I start to think about the psychedelic journey on mushrooms and how parallel that is, right? There's a contact with humanity that I think can come through a psychedelic journey with with psilocybin that does the exact same connections of you realize your place in the world and you realize your place in the forest of people, if you will, and there's an exchange going on, and that can be done through this psilocybin, and that may be a little bit far out. I don't know if there's a question in there, Steve, but
no, I love what you're saying. I got all kinds of ideas and responses to that.
no, throw one or two out there. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And I'd love to hear.
Yes,
Chris. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Emphatic yes is the answer to that. That is the real. That is nature, and we are nature.
Right.
Right. It's true. Like I heard the saying that there was the example you used was a collection of trees that were near a water source. And they were aware that there was a tree that was some distance away, like over 50 yards or whatever, that couldn't access the water as well. Mm. And the trees shuttled the water under the ground to the other tree, right? And that this is nature, and I'll relate it to humanity. Is nature wants to do that,
right?
It wants to be harmonious. It wants to repair. It wants to make things better, right? And our brain is the same way. Once the brain understands a better way to do something, it'll always want to do it that way. It's just the nature of things. And so mushrooms, for me, mushrooms, they're nicknamed the teacher, and that's because they're just very wise. And if you're thinking from evolutionary perspective, if there was nothing on the earth, the first thing that would grow would be the mushrooms, the fungus. And so they're the oldest, right? And the wisest. And they kind of help shuttle the resource, or help shuttle the information, right? Where they're helping the trees take that nutrient or water across to another tree. It wants to do that. And we're no different, right? So if we're just to change the word tree to human, right? Like the engagement, the relationship between a human being and the mushroom is the same. The mushroom will begin to relate and provide resource in the form of wisdom, or emotional relief, or creativity, because that's its nature. The mushrooms want to do that, and my experience is our brains want to upgrade. They want to heal, and so. Yeah. I think with intention, what I suggest is what I do, or what I ask people to do, is like be in relationship with the mushroom. Understand that it wants to connect with you. It wants to work with you, and then it does, right? And then something very miraculous and cool happens. It's hard to replicate, in other ways. It can obviously be done, but it's a wonderful thing that the human person and the mushroom can do together.
Yeah. Wasn't that the Netflix Change Your Mind?
Yeah, how to change your mind.
I think that's when I initially saw it, and from an evolutionary perspective, those guys really believe in the depth and weight of this mycelium, and it's really cool the way that you guys identify how the mushroom kind of works with you, and can create an experience, and more objectively create an experience of which you don't have to necessarily tether to or be over emotional with. You can kind of see it in front of you, and if it doesn't, you can let it pass, or bring it in, or intentionalize it, or integrate it. I love that opportunity, because for whatever reason, when you get into talk therapy, so often you get these dead ends, and I don't remember, or these blank spots. And that was the story of really my first 10 years of recovery. And I was one of those people that sat in Alcoholics Anonymous for the first 6 years, and I was the secretary of the meeting, that had a little bit of depression, thought about drinking each day, but because I loved the community so much and the people were like family to me, I stuck around, was able to do it. But I look back at that experience, and offering up something like psilocybin, or potentially even ketamine, probably could have created a quality of life in my first 6 or 7 years of recovery that was better than a 6 out of 10. And this is so exciting for people coming in now, because they're really, at least in the Peaks experience, we're getting to introduce them to the best of what we have, a lot like you do with your clients, and walk with them in that journey. And we're seeing people at Peaks coming into inpatient treatment, settling in the first 3 to 5 days, because they know, well, first they can see their recovery inside our program because it's broad, it's open-minded, and it has these offerings that you talk about that I think really have the ability to move people on and get to a safe place much quicker than they would otherwise.
Yeah, think about it this way. Like, imagine this, like just kind of being in the metaphor, Chris. Like, you're in these AA meetings. You're the secretary. You have your regular folks that are coming in. You love the community, right? Those are the trees, right? The trees are like, we want to give you the shade. We want to shuttle the nutrients to you. Let's go to coffee. I want to give you a cake on your birthday, or read the book with me, And that it's the same thing, right? And if you could imagine if that was just more acceptable, right? Like, you can have the wonderful benefit of that community and be like, no, and I can also have mushrooms. I can also have the relationship that mushrooms offer me, kind of internally, right? And being able to have both, right? Have both to have a more fulfilling life experience, a healthier, more well experience.
Yeah, I love that, because I think for a long time, especially young adults, and when I got into this, I was 22 years old, and I literally thought it was a life sentence to mediocrity. That's what recovery was, because we have this allergy, and we got to walk through, and we got to do these things that other people can't do. And this new way of thinking is quite the opposite of that. You can have everything that you could have ever imagined. We just have to walk through these certain steps and develop this authentic and vulnerable connection with others. We have this opportunity to recover in a way that I don't think was possible before. Just really cool stuff. Just sitting here watching, I'm just like, oh my goodness, cool.
I think what'll be interesting to see is, mushrooms are mind medicine. They are good for depression, but it'll be interesting when and if they allow something like MDMA, or I know there are kind of plant versions of MDMA that will allow like heart medicine with mind medicine together to really, really deeply transform a person's experience. Right now, I think you guys can't use MDMA yet, right?
No.
Or you can use plant versions of it.
Yeah. That's it. And even then, it can't be used in kind of formal. I mean, we're in a nebulous area right now. It's a little unclear, and certainly, a lot of things are still in the line, and insurance and that sort of thing, still trying to sort it all out. But
of course,
well, Steve, as we kind of wrap up here, I feel like we should talk again, like in 6 months or a year, and have you back on here, and like, let's just see where all this is going. And I really appreciate your passion. It gets me really fired up, if I'm going to be honest with you, about where this whole movement is going. I'd love for you to kind of do a little promo of Coastwise, if you don't mind. Throw out your website and talk about how people can reach you real quick, and then we'll sign off for the show.
Sure. Yeah. I appreciate the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
I would love to come back in a half year. I like the friendship that we're building. You guys are great. I think any client that comes to you is going to be very well served and very lucky. And I hope that you'll have that experience with Coastwise. If you want to find me, you can go to coastwisecounselingcenter.com. That's the therapy side, or you can go to Coastwise Recovery Center. That's the outpatient drug and alcohol side. And follow all the links. My phone number's on there. And what I would say to any kind of like would-be listeners or people who are looking to heal, in any way you need to, is like, really, I said it earlier, the Coastwise brand, all my therapists, my whole team, myself, what we believe in is that you deserve to have a good life. Mm-hmm. You get one time on the ride, it should be a good one. If you choose to work with us, we're going to be honest with you. We're going to be caring towards you, and we're going to give you a really solid experience, and we're going to do our best to help you have more of the life experience that is really possible for you. And it would be a delight to at least answer questions, or if one day it felt right for you to work with me or any of my team, it would be a real delight, and I'd be grateful to have you. So thank you for having me on, guys. Any listeners out there, thanks for listening. And I hope to keep up the relationship and the friendship with you guys at Peaks.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that as well. And next time I'm in the LA area, I plan on looking you up, Steve. I'd love to get coffee or something with you. And really appreciate you. And I think anyone who goes to Coastwise is fortunate to have somebody so innovative and kind of putting forward where we're going as a field rather than where we've been as a field. So I appreciate that. And with that, we'll go ahead and sign off. Please follow us on Finding Peaks, or follow Finding Peaks. You can follow us on TikTok. There we go. You can find us on Facebook, of course, Instagram. Feel free to email us at questions@findingpeaks.com. And with that, we'll sign off. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Peace.